Every film that has a vague interest, at the very least a vague interest, in a sequel, as many tentpole films do, will end in a deliberately open-ended way, as to say, almost the words "to be continued" ... coming on the screen. I think it's cooler for a movie to end slam cold shut. That's it. Now, if you want to start it up again, that's not hard. You could just say, "Okay, here we go with chapter 2." Why did you guys decide to not slam the door and say this is the end, rather than keep it sort of open? You know. Well, I mean, I don't want to give anything away, but she doesn't get killed, and she's all right. She's ready to go for whatever comes next.
You know, I always saw this as an origin story.
Okay.
You know, and in the movie, Angelina's character of Evelyn A. Salt is accused of being a Russian sleeper spy. Someone who's allegedly has been trained during Soviet times as an American, sent to America and to infiltrate and rise up in an institution, and she ends up in the CIA, supposedly. That's what she's accused of. Evelyn Salt goes on the run to prove her innocence, and the movie starts to be, for the audience and for her character, an investigation into the question, who is Evelyn Salt? Now, by the end of the movie, I think that Evelyn Salt is only just beginning to realize who she is, as we are. So it seemed like the ending was the beginning of something, and that's why we deliberately made it open-ended.
But all movies do that. They all do that. To be continued. I know they're going to be continued. We all expect that. You know, I like a movie to go bam. You know, isn't that cool? You know, just cool endings. You know, I don't. You know, sequel fine. You know,
I like a movie that follows you out of the theater.
Okay.
And the story inhabits your mind, and
sure.
You know, and you speculate, and you're already in.
Right.
The end of that movie and the beginning of the story that goes on that may never be filmed, but which you've become a part of.
That's pretty harrowing, by the way, the North Korean jail sequence. Is that shot in some studio in New York or something?
Yeah, yeah, a little studio in Brooklyn. Yeah, it's
That's pretty good, I thought. I believed it more than I believed the North Korean torture sequence that Pierce Brosnan is subjected to in one of his last days. Remember the same thing?
Right.
And goes across the bridge, very similar.
Well, if you look in that research material that I sent you, you'll find a whole section on North Korean torture.
Okay.
Pretty well documented by Amnesty International and so on.
Okay.
So the torture that's used
they're pretty awful.
Looks awful and realistic because it's based on the testimony of someone who suffered an escape from North Korea.
By the way, there's enough information on this site that you sent me. This is This is accessible, though. A person could find it.
No, no one could find it.
Oh.
It's just my site.
Right.
You'd have to be a spy to find it.
Okay. All right. It just didn't look like there was no special code or password to get on. You know, it just is, it's really cool. It's got the whole.
Yeah, it
fascinating.
Sort of lays out the whole movie. I mean, in a movie like this, where there's such suspension of disbelief required of the audience,
right.
And the story just takes so many twists and turns, and the movie keeps shape-shifting even. I figured that the way to keep the story grounded was to really fill those actors and all the people working on the film with a lot of research, so that every gesture from one of the actors in a movie that's very spare where you find out very little, that all the gestures were filled with something that was real and reality based, so that every police officer knows the routine of what they're doing, how it's really done, that every background line appears to have a technical reality to it. So everything from how the nuclear football would be launched by a president, the protocol for that, the way defectors are interrogated if they come to the CIA and offer advice, the whole story of Russian sleeper spies, which people think has only been revealed to us by the arrest of the New York 11 2 weeks ago. But I mean, there's a whole lot of literature out there about this program that was developed by the KGB's Department S.
I would like you to make clear, as you made clear to me, that the Russian activity that we see, this is not coordinated Russian foreign policy activity. This is renegade Russian,
absolutely,
crazy Russians on their own dime, so to speak. So
yeah,
right.
When I first read Kurt Wimmer's script, I was drawn to it for a number of reasons. The first one was because my dad was a military spy in the Australian equivalent of the OSS, a group called Z Special Force, and his job was to train operatives to go up into Southeast Asia and work and organize and sabotage behind the Japanese lines during the Second World War. So I was brought up on stories of spying, righteous stories, because the war was won and it was a righteous war, and very romantic stories. And for the last probably 10 or 12 years, I've really been fascinated by the concept of sleeper spies, because it just seems so obvious as a weapon. My dad always said to me, the greatest weapon is the human being, son. The atomic bomb, yeah, but really it's the human that's going to be our downfall. And I'd read stories about sleeper spies in the Second World War and Korea and Vietnam and so on, and I was looking for a vehicle to bring it to film. And then along comes Kurt's script, which seemed like it was the fantasy of a Hollywood screenwriter. And then I started to scratch the surface, interviewing some of the people that I'd made contact with over the years doing the Jack Ryan films, ex-CIA, ex-KGB people. And after about a week I realized that this was not some fantasy. And of course logic tells you that it wouldn't be a fantasy. What does a spy do? A spy goes to another country and tries to get information. Are you going to announce yourself at the border? No. You're not going to announce yourself as an enemy. You'll pretend to be a friend. The best spying is done by covert operatives, disguised, undercover, pretending to be one of them, not one of us. And so I started to speak to KGB people, and I realized that the KGB did have, during their last years, a Department S. It's real. That was in charge of training what they called illegals. People who were trained to be Germans, to be Koreans, to be Japanese, to be Americans, and were sent in country to sit and wait until Day X. Now Day X, which you hear about in the movie, again it sounds like some fantastic invention. It's not. Day X was the day designated for all of these sleeper spies to join together in acts of sabotage and assassination, and that was to be the day of the beginning of war between the Soviet Union and the West.
But
now,
what decade?
In our film,
yeah.
When
did they envision that happening, do you think?
When did they envision it happening? Well, they never knew. There was no day set.
Okay.
It's not a Nostradamus prophecy. There was no particular day. The day seemed during the Cold War to be inevitable, that one day these people would need to be called into action. Of course, in